The human ship Horizon's Edge moved through space like a silent giant. Inside, Lieutenant Amy Carter stood at the window of her quarters watching the alien planet grow larger. This was her first real mission since joining the diplomatic corps. Her hands were shaking just a little. The planet below was called Kelzar. It was home to a species that looked like giant cats. They walked on two legs, had hands with claws and fur that came in different patterns. Some had stripes. Others had spots. All of them were at least 7 feet tall. Amy had spent 6 months studying everything she could about them. She knew their language, their history, and their customs. Or at least she thought she did. Captain Paul Bennett's voice came through the ship's speakers. All diplomatic personnel were to report to the briefing room. Amy took a deep breath and left her quarters. The hallways were full of crew members moving with purpose. Everyone knew this mission mattered. First contact with a new species was always important. Get it right and humans would gain a new ally. Get it wrong, and it could mean war. In the briefing room, Ambassador Gregory Holmes stood at the front. He was a tall man with gray hair and a confident smile. He had done this kind of thing dozens of times before. Amy found a seat near the back next to Lieutenant Jake Morrison, a security officer who had become her friend during the long journey. This should be simple, Holmes said, looking around the room. The Kelzari have already agreed to meet with us. They want trade. They want technology. We want access to their mining operations and their strategic location in this sector. Everyone wins. Amy raised her hand. Holmes nodded at her. Sir, I've been reading about their meal customs. It's very important to them. If we eat with them, we need to follow specific rules. Holmes waved his hand dismissively. I've handled hundreds of negotiations. A meal is just a meal. We'll be fine. Amy wanted to say more, but she could see Holmes wasn't interested. Jake leaned over and whispered, You tried. That's all you can do. The shuttle took the diplomatic team down to the planet's surface an hour later. Amy stayed on the ship. Only senior staff were going to the first meeting. She would analyze the data they brought back and prepare reports. It wasn't exciting, but it was her job. The Kelzari capital city was beautiful. Amy watched through the video feed as the team walked through streets lined with tall buildings made of white stone. The Kelzari people stopped to stare at the humans. Cubs, which was what they called their young, pointed and made sounds that the translator couldn't quite catch. The High Council chamber was enormous. 5 Kelzari leaders sat on raised platforms, their tails swishing slowly behind them. The lead counselor was a female named Sareth. Her fur was golden with black stripes. Her eyes were green and sharp. She studied the humans carefully as they entered. Ambassador Holmes bowed. That was good. The Kelzari respected formal greetings. Sareth returned the bow and the meeting began. Amy watched everything on the monitors in the ship's communication center. For the first few hours, things went well. Both sides talked about trade routes and resource sharing. The Kelzari asked questions about Earth. Holmes answered them smoothly. Amy started to relax. Maybe she had worried for nothing. Then came the meal. The Kelzari servants brought in low tables and placed them in the center of the room. Food was arranged on large platters. It smelled good even through the video feed. Amy could see various meats, fruits, and breads. The Kelzari counselors moved to sit around the tables in a specific pattern. Sareth sat at the head. The others formed a circle around her. Holmes and his team were invited to join. This was the moment Amy had worried about. In Kelzari culture, sharing a meal wasn't casual. It meant trust. It meant family. There were rules about who sat where, who ate first, and how food was passed. Holmes sat down across from Sareth. That was wrong. Only family members sat directly across from the head of the table. Then he reached for food before Sareth had begun eating. That was worse. Amy's stomach twisted. She wanted to call down to them to warn them, but she had no way to interrupt without making things even worse. Sareth's ears went flat against her head. The other counselors stopped moving. The room went completely silent. Holmes didn't notice. He was talking about mining equipment and smiling. He took a bite of the meat. One of the counselors stood up abruptly. His fur was bristling. He said something in the Kelzari language that the translator rendered as insult given. Honor broken. Sareth stood as well. Her voice was cold when she spoke. You do not understand our ways. You treat our traditions like they mean nothing. This meeting is over. Holmes finally realized something was wrong. He stood up quickly, trying to apologize, but the Kelzari were already leaving. Their tails lashed behind them in anger. Within minutes, the council chamber was empty, except for the confused human delegation. Back on the ship, Captain Bennett called an emergency meeting. Amy was included this time. The mood in the briefing room was tense. Holmes looked shaken. The other diplomats were talking in low voices, trying to figure out what had gone wrong. "They're refusing all communication," Bennett said. He looked tired. "They've asked us to remain in orbit, but not to send anyone else to the surface. We're in a holding pattern. What did we do wrong?" one of the other diplomats asked. Amy cleared her throat. Everyone turned to look at her. It was the meal. In Kelzari culture, when you share food, you're saying your family. There are rules. Ambassador Holmes sat in the wrong place and ate before the leader. To them, it was like he was saying he didn't respect their customs. Holmes's face went red. It was just a meal. How was I supposed to know it was that important? "I tried to tell you, sir," Amy said quietly. Bennett held up his hand before the argument could continue. "What's done is done. The question now is how we fix it. Amy, you've studied their culture more than anyone else here. What do we do?" Amy thought about everything she had read. The Kelzari were proud but not unreasonable. They valued family above everything else. They believed that trust had to be earned through actions, not words. "I don't know if we can fix it," she admitted. "We broke their trust. That's not something they forgive easily." The meeting ended without any solutions. Amy went back to her quarters and pulled up all her research files. There had to be something she was missing. Some way to show the Kelzari that humans could learn and change. She was still reading when the alert came through. 3 Kelzari were requesting permission to board the ship. They were young, barely adults. They had been assigned as junior attachés to help with the diplomatic mission. Now they were stuck between their duty and their people's anger. Captain Bennett gave permission for them to board. Amy watched on the monitors as they came through the airlock. They moved slowly, their heads down. Their ears were flat against their heads. Something was clearly wrong. Amy left her quarters and made her way to the docking bay. She wasn't sure why. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was guilt. These young Kelzari were paying the price for Holmes's mistake. When she arrived, she saw them standing in the bay, looking lost and afraid. One of them, the smallest, looked up and met her eyes. His fur was silver with black spots. His eyes were yellow and sad. Amy felt something tighten in her chest. Whatever happened next, she knew these 3 young Kelzari were going to need help. And maybe, just maybe, they were the key to fixing everything. The 3 young Kelzari stood in the cargo bay like they didn't know what to do with themselves. Amy watched them from the doorway. They were trying to look professional, but their body language told a different story. Their tails hung low. Their ears kept twitching. The smallest one, the one with silver fur and black spots, kept looking toward the airlock like he wanted to run back through it. Lieutenant Jake Morrison was with her. He was supposed to escort the Kelzari to their quarters, but he seemed uncomfortable. "They look scared," he whispered to Amy. "They probably are," Amy said. "Their people just cut off contact with us. These 3 are stuck here." The largest of the Kelzari stepped forward. His fur was black with gray stripes. "I am Kos," he said through the translator device on his belt. His voice was deep. "This is Mira and Reth. We are here to complete documentation work for the trade agreement." "Even though the talks broke down?" Jake asked. Kos's tail flicked in what might have been irritation. "We were assigned. We will complete our duty." Amy introduced herself and Jake. She tried to smile in a way that seemed friendly. She wasn't sure if the Kelzari understood human facial expressions, but it seemed worth trying. "We'll show you to your quarters. If you need anything, just ask." The Kelzari followed them through the ship's corridors. Crew members stopped to stare. Most of them had never seen an alien up close before. Some looked curious. Others looked nervous. Amy couldn't blame them. The Kelzari were intimidating. They were tall and powerful. Their claws, even retracted, were visible. But Amy could see past that. These weren't warriors. They were kids, really, barely old enough to be away from their families. Their quarters were in the guest section of the ship. 3 rooms connected by a common area. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and comfortable. Kos looked around and nodded. "This is acceptable." "There's food in the storage unit," Jake said, pointing to a panel on the wall. If you need anything else, use the communication panel. The Kelzari thanked them in their formal way, pressing their hands to their chests and bowing slightly. Amy and Jake left them alone. As they walked back through the corridors, Jake shook his head. I feel bad for them. They're caught in the middle of this mess. Amy agreed. She spent the rest of the day trying to work on diplomatic reports, but her mind kept wandering back to the three young Kelzari. Something about them bothered her, but she couldn't figure out what it was. The answer came 2 days later. Dr. Henry Price, the ship's chief medical officer, sent out an urgent message. The three Kelzari were sick. Amy dropped everything and ran to the medical bay. When she arrived, the three young aliens were sitting on examination beds. They looked worse than before. Their fur seemed dull. Their movements were slow. Reth, the small silver one, was swaying slightly like he might fall over. What's wrong with them? Captain Bennett was there too, his face creased with worry. Dr. Price pulled up a scan on his screen. They're starving. According to these readings, they haven't eaten anything in at least 2 days, maybe longer. That's impossible, Bennett said. We provided food. The storage units in their quarters are full. Koss spoke up, his voice weak. We cannot eat. Why not? Amy asked. She stepped closer to the three Kelzari. Is the food wrong? We tried to match your dietary needs. Mira, the female with orange and white fur, made a sound that might have been a sad laugh. The food is fine. We cannot eat it. Not like this. Amy pulled up a chair and sat down so she was eye level with them. Help me understand. What do you mean you can't eat? Reth was the one who answered. His voice was soft and young. In our culture, we do not eat alone. We eat with family, with pack. When you eat alone, the food has no meaning, it cannot nourish you. But surely when you're away from home, you have to eat, Jake said. He had followed Amy to the medical bay. Koss's ears went flat. Usually, yes. When we are away, we eat with our work groups, our teams. They become temporary family. But our families have forbidden us from eating with humans. They say you insulted our ways. They say we cannot trust you. Amy felt her stomach sink. So you're stuck. You can't eat alone, but you're not allowed to eat with us. Yes, Mira said simply. Captain Bennett looked angry, but Amy could tell it wasn't directed at the Kelzari. This is insane. We'll contact your High Council. We'll explain that you need to eat. They will not listen, Koss said. They believe we should return home, but we cannot. We were assigned here. Our honor demands we complete our duty. Dr. Price looked at his scans again. They can survive maybe 3 more days. After that, the damage will be permanent. We might have to force feed them. All 3 Kelzari reacted to that. Their fur bristled. Their claws extended slightly. No, Reth said, and there was real fear in his voice. That would be worse than death. To have food forced into you without family, without meaning. It would break something inside us. Amy stood up and walked to the window. She stared out at the stars and thought about everything she had learned about Kelzari culture. Food wasn't just fuel to them. It was connection. It was love. It was how they built families and communities. These 3 young people were literally dying because they couldn't make that connection. An idea began to form in her mind. It was strange. It might not work. But she had to try. She turned back to the 3 Kelzari. What if someone became your temporary family, just until this diplomatic mess gets sorted out? Would that work? The 3 of them looked at each other. They had a silent conversation with their ears and tails. Finally, Koss spoke. It would depend on the person. They would need to understand what it means. When you eat with someone in our culture, you are saying they matter. You are saying you will protect them and they will protect you. It is not casual. I understand, Amy said. She looked at Captain Bennett. Sir, I'd like to volunteer. Bennett frowned. Amy, you don't have to do this. Yes, I do. This is my fault. I warned Ambassador Holmes about the meal customs, but I didn't push hard enough. I should have made him listen. Now these 3 are suffering because of our mistakes. Dr. Price stepped forward. If you're serious about this, You need to understand what you're committing to. You'd need to eat every meal with them. Every single one. If you miss even one meal, it could break the bond and make things worse. Amy looked at the three young Kelzari. Reth was watching her with those sad yellow eyes. She thought about her own little brother back on Earth. He was about the same age Reth seemed to be. She thought about how she would feel if he was stuck on an alien ship, slowly starving because of cultural rules he couldn't break. "I'm serious," she said. Mira spoke up. "You would do this? Eat with us every day? Even though your people and our people are in conflict?" "Yes," Amy said firmly. "You didn't do anything wrong. You don't deserve to suffer." The three Kelzari had another silent conversation. Then Koss stood up, despite his weakness. He walked over to Amy and placed his large hand on her shoulder. His claws were retracted. The gesture was gentle. "We accept. You will be our temporary family." Captain Bennett sighed, but he nodded. "All right. Amy, you're officially assigned to cultural liaison duty. Your primary responsibility is making sure these three eat regularly. Dr. Price monitor their health closely." Amy felt the weight of what she had just agreed to. 3 meals a day every day until the diplomatic situation was resolved. No skipping, no excuses. It was a bigger commitment than she had ever made to anything. But when she looked at the 3 young Kelzari, she knew it was the right choice. "When do we start?" she asked. Reth made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Now would be good. I am very hungry." An hour later, Amy found herself in the ship's mess hall with 3 alien teenagers. She had asked the kitchen staff to prepare something simple: grilled meat, bread, and vegetables. Things that she knew the Kelzari could eat. The food was arranged on a table in the corner, away from the other crew members who were staring openly at them. Amy wasn't sure what to do. She had read about Kelzari meal customs, but reading and doing were different things. She looked at Koss, who seemed to be the leader of the 3. "How do we do this?" Koss sat down first. He gestured to a specific spot. "You sit there. That is the family leader position. Mira and Reth will sit on either side of you. I will sit across from you." Amy took the seat he indicated. It felt strange to be at the head of the table. The 3 Kelzari arranged themselves around her. Their ears were forward now, alert. They looked at the food, but nobody moved to take any. "Don't we start eating?" Amy asked. Mira shook her head. "You eat first. You are the family leader for this meal. After you begin, we can begin." Amy's hands were shaking slightly as she reached for a piece of bread. She took a bite. The moment she did, all 3 Kelzari began eating. Not quickly or desperately despite their hunger. They ate slowly, properly, savoring each bite. And for the first time in days, the tension in their bodies began to ease. The routine started the next morning. Amy's alarm went off at 6:30. She got dressed quickly and made her way to the mess hall. The 3 Kelzari were already there, sitting at the same corner table from the night before. They looked better. Their fur had more shine to it. Their movements were stronger. But they sat in front of empty plates, waiting. Amy sat down in her spot at the head of the table. A crew member brought food for all of them: eggs, toast, and fruit. Amy took the first bite, and the 3 young aliens began eating. Around them, other crew members were staring. Some whispered to each other. Amy tried to ignore them. "Do people always stare at you like this?" Reth asked. He was the most talkative of the 3 during meals. Away from the table, he was quiet and nervous. But when they were eating, he seemed to come alive. "They're just curious," Amy said. "Most of them have never met someone from another species before." Mira's tail swished. "It is strange. On our world, there are only Kelzari. We knew other species existed, but we never thought we would meet them." "What made your people want to meet us?" Amy asked. She was genuinely curious. The Kelzari had been isolationist for centuries. The fact that they had agreed to first contact at all was unusual. Koss was quiet for a moment. He chewed his food slowly. "Resources," he said finally. "Our star is dying. Not quickly, but in a few hundred years our world will become cold. We need to find new places to live. We need technology to help us. We cannot do it alone, Amy thought about that. The Kelzari weren't just making friends for fun. They were trying to save their species. That made Ambassador Holmes's mistake even worse. These people had reached out despite their fears, and the first thing humans did was insult them. I'm sorry about what happened at the council meeting, Amy said. Reth's ears drooped. It is not your fault. You tried to warn your ambassador. He did not listen. Maybe I should have tried harder. Mira reached across the table and touched Amy's hand with one clawed finger. It was a gentle gesture. You are helping us now. That is what matters. After breakfast, Amy had to go to her regular duties. She worked in the xenobiology lab, analyzing samples and writing reports, but her mind kept drifting back to the three Kelzari. She wondered what they were doing, if they were okay. At noon, she headed back to the mess hall. The three of them were there again, waiting at the table. Amy slid into her chair and they began lunch together. This time, a few crew members sat at nearby tables. Not right next to them, but close enough that it felt less isolated. Amy noticed Lieutenant Jake Morrison was one of them. He nodded at her and smiled. Over the next week, a pattern developed. Breakfast at 7, lunch at noon, dinner at 6. Amy never missed a meal. Some days she was tired, some days she had too much work. But she always showed up. The three Kelzari were depending on her. The crew started to adjust to the unusual sight. Conversations went back to normal around the mess hall. People stopped staring quite so much. Some even started to wave at the Kelzari when they passed them in the corridors. One day, about 10 days into the routine, Ensign Lisa Wade approached their table during lunch. She was young, maybe 22, with red hair and freckles. I hope I'm not interrupting, she said nervously. Koss looked at Amy. Amy could tell he was asking permission without words. She nodded slightly. You're not interrupting, Koss said. Did you need something? Lisa held up a tablet. I've been studying your language. I was wondering if you could help me with pronunciation. Some of the sounds are really hard. Mira's ears perked up. You are learning our language? Trying to, Lisa said with a laugh. I'm not very good yet. Sit down, Reth said, gesturing to an empty chair. We will help you. Lisa sat, and for the rest of the meal, the three Kelzari taught her basic phrases in their language. Amy watched and felt something warm in her chest. This was what first contact should have been. People from different worlds learning about each other, helping each other. More crew members started joining them after that. Craig Palmer, an engineer, asked about Kelzari technology. Lieutenant Morrison wanted to know about their fighting styles. A cook named Danny Webb asked what kinds of food they liked best so he could prepare better meals for them. The corner of the mess hall became a gathering place. Not crowded, but friendly. The Kelzari seemed to enjoy it. Their body language became more relaxed. They laughed more. They told stories about their home world. Amy learned that Reth wanted to be a teacher. Mira was studying art. Koss was training to be a pilot like his mother. Then came the day Amy was late. She had been in the lab working on an important analysis. The computer had found something strange in one of the samples from the Kelzari homeworld. A unique mineral that could potentially be used for faster-than-light travel. It was exciting. It was important. And it made her lose track of time. When she looked up at the clock, it was 12:15. She swore under her breath and ran from the lab. She didn't even stop to put away her samples properly. She just ran. The mess hall was full of people eating lunch. Amy's eyes went straight to the corner table. The three Kelzari were sitting there. Food was in front of them, but none of them had taken a single bite. They were waiting for her. Amy felt a rush of guilt. She hurried over to the table, breathing hard from running. I'm so sorry. I lost track of time. I should have set an alarm. It is all right, Koss said, but his voice was strained. She could tell they were hungry. Really hungry. Amy sat down quickly and took a bite of her food. The three of them began eating immediately. The relief on their faces was clear. Amy felt terrible. She had made them wait 15 minutes. 15 minutes of sitting in front of food they couldn't eat. 15 minutes of hunger and worry. I won't let it happen again, she promised. Reth's tail curled around his own leg, a self-comforting gesture Amy had learned to recognize. We knew you would come. We trust you. That trust felt heavy. Amy realized just how much responsibility she had taken on. These three young people were depending on her for something fundamental. Not just food, but the ability to eat at all. If she failed them, they would go hungry. If she failed them too many times, they might starve. After that day, Amy was extra careful. She set 3 alarms for every mealtime. She kept a clock visible in the lab. She made sure everyone she worked with knew she had to leave for meals no matter what. About 3 weeks into the routine, something changed in the mess hall. Amy arrived for lunch and found her chair was empty as always. But someone had put a small cushion on it. The cushion was blue, her favorite color. There was no note. No explanation. "Did one of you do this?" she asked the Kelzari. They shook their heads. "We saw someone put it there this morning," Mira said. "We do not know who." Amy sat down and they ate lunch together. The cushion made the chair more comfortable. It was a small thing, but it made her smile. The next day, there was something else different. The chair had been moved slightly. It was now positioned more centrally at the table. And when Amy looked around the mess hall, she realized that no one else ever sat in that chair. Even when the mess hall was crowded and seats were hard to find, her chair stayed empty until she arrived. "I think your crew has adopted you," Koss said with amusement in his voice. "What do you mean?" Reth gestured around the room. "Look, they save your seat for you. They know it is yours. They are showing respect." Amy looked around and realized he was right. When crew members came into the mess hall, they looked at the corner table, saw the empty chair, and moved on without question. They understood. That chair was Amy's chair. It was part of the routine, part of what held everything together. Lieutenant Morrison confirmed it later that day. "Yeah, the whole ship knows about your chair," he said. "It's become kind of a thing. Nobody sits there except you. I think someone would get in trouble if they tried." "Who decided that?" Amy asked. Jake shrugged. "Nobody decided it officially. It just happened. People saw what you were doing for those 3 kids. They saw how important the routine was. The chair became a symbol, I guess." Amy thought about that. She had never asked anyone to save her seat. She had never expected special treatment. But the crew had done it anyway. They had recognized something important was happening and decided to support it in their own way. That evening, Amy arrived at dinner to find the chair had been cleaned and polished. Someone had even carved a small flower into the wooden back. It was delicate work, beautiful. Amy ran her fingers over it and felt emotion well up in her throat. "Your people care about you," Mira observed. "They show it in small ways." "I think they care about you too," Amy said. "They see how hard this situation is. They want to help." Koss made a sound that was almost a purr. "Perhaps there is hope for our peoples after all. If humans can learn to care about 3 stranded Kelzari, maybe our leaders can learn to forgive one mistake." Amy hoped he was right. The diplomatic talks were still stalled. No progress had been made. But here in the mess hall, surrounded by the smell of food and the quiet sounds of people eating together, it felt like something important was happening. Something that might matter more than official negotiations. She sat in her chair, the one that had become hers through no request of her own, and began to eat. The 3 young Kelzari joined her, and around them the crew of the Horizon's Edge continued their lives. But now there was a space held sacred. The morning started like any other morning. Amy woke up at 6:30, got dressed, and headed to the mess hall. She had been eating with the 3 Kelzari for almost a month now. The routine had become as natural as breathing. She knew how Reth liked his meat cooked. She knew that Mira preferred fruit over vegetables. She knew that Koss ate slowly, always the last one to finish. But when she walked into the mess hall that morning, she could feel something was different. The air felt charged with tension. Crew members were whispering to each other in tight groups. When they saw her, they went quiet. Amy found the 3 Kelzari at their usual table. They looked worried. Their ears were flat against their heads. Their tails were tucked close to their bodies. "What's wrong?" Amy asked as she sat down in her chair. Koss looked at her with those serious golden eyes. "A ship has arrived from our world. Our parents are on it." Amy's stomach dropped. "Your parents are here?" "They came without permission from the High Council," Mira said quietly. "They broke protocol. They could be punished. But they said they could not stay away any longer. They needed to see that we were safe." Reth's voice was small. "They are very angry about what happened, about the insult to our people, but they are also worried about us." Amy understood the complexity of the situation immediately. These parents had risked a lot to come here. They loved their children enough to defy their government. but they also carried their people's anger and hurt. Meeting them was going to be difficult. When will they come aboard? Amy asked. Soon, Ka said. Captain Bennett has given permission. They will be here within the hour. Amy took a bite of her food and the three of them began eating. But the meal was quiet. None of them talked much. The weight of what was coming hung over all of them. After breakfast, Amy went to find Captain Bennett. He was in his ready room looking at reports on his computer screen. He looked tired. The diplomatic standoff had been wearing on everyone. Amy, he said when she entered, I assume you heard about our visitors? Yes, sir. Kaz told me this morning. Bennett leaned back in his chair. 3 Kelzari adults are coming aboard. They're the parents of those 3 kids you've been taking care of. I want you there when they arrive. You're the one who has built a relationship with their children. Maybe that will mean something to them. I hope so, sir. So do I, Bennett said. He looked at her seriously. Amy, what you've done these past weeks has been remarkable. You took on a responsibility that most people would have run from. You've kept those 3 kids alive and healthy. More than that, you've given them hope. Their parents are going to see that. Make sure they understand what it meant. Amy nodded, though she felt nervous. She had never met adult Kelzari before. She had only worked with Reth, Mira, and Kos, who were young and still learning their own culture. Adults would be different. They would be fully formed in their beliefs and traditions. They would judge her by standards she might not understand. An hour later, Amy stood in the docking bay with Captain Bennett, Lieutenant Morrison, and the 3 young Kelzari. The airlock cycled open, and 3 tall Kelzari stepped through. The first was female with orange and white fur similar to Mira's. Her eyes were amber-colored and sharp. She moved with grace and power. This had to be Thessa, Mira's mother. The second was male, silver and black like Reth, but bigger and more muscular. His face was scarred on one side. He looked around the docking bay like he was assessing it for threats. Reth's father, probably. The third was massive even for a Kelzari. Black and gray fur covered a body that looked like it was made of pure muscle. This was Korvax, Kos's father. He was the one who worried Amy most. His expression was hard and unreadable. The moment the 3 parents saw their children, everything changed. Thessa rushed forward and pulled Mira into an embrace. Reth's father picked him up like he weighed nothing, holding him close. Korvax touched foreheads with Kos in a gesture that was clearly intimate and meaningful. Amy watched the reunions and felt her throat tighten. These parents had crossed space to find their children. They had defied their government. They had risked everything because they loved their kids that much. After a long moment, Thessa released Mira and turned to look at the humans. Her amber eyes fixed on Captain Bennett first, then moved to Amy. The look was not friendly. You are the humans who insulted our High Council, she said through her translator. Her voice was cold. Bennett stepped forward. I am Captain Bennett. On behalf of humanity, I apologize for the offense given. It was not intentional. We did not understand your customs well enough. Ignorance is not an excuse, Korvax said. His voice was deep and rumbling. When you visit another's home, you learn their ways. You respect them. Your ambassador did neither. You're right, Bennett said. He didn't make excuses. He didn't argue. He just accepted the truth. Amy respected that. Reth's father, whose name Amy learned was Vitar, looked around the docking bay. Where have our children been staying? How have they been treated? They've been given quarters and full access to the ship, Bennett said. They've been treated as honored guests. And fed? Thessa asked. Her eyes narrowed. How have they been fed? We know the position you put them in. Our children could not eat without family. Yet they were forbidden from treating humans as family. How did you solve this? Bennett gestured to Amy. Lieutenant Amy Carter took on the responsibility of becoming temporary family for your children. She has eaten every meal with them for the past month. She has not missed a single one. All 3 parents turned to look at Amy. The weight of their attention was almost physical. Amy straightened her shoulders and met their gazes. This is true? Thessa asked, speaking directly to Amy now. Yes, ma'am, Amy said. Korvax took a step toward her. He was enormous up close. His claws extended slightly, though Amy didn't think it was a threat. More like an unconscious reaction. You ate with our children? Every day? 3 meals a day? Yes, sir. Why? Vitar asked. Why would you do this? You are not their family. You are not even their species. Amy thought about how to answer. She could talk about duty. She could talk about guilt over the diplomatic failure. But those weren't the real reasons. Not the deep ones. Because they were scared and hungry, Amy said simply. Because they were stuck in a situation they didn't create and didn't deserve. Because no one, especially not kids, should suffer for mistakes adults made. And because I could help, so I did. The three parents looked at each other. They had a silent conversation through ear positions and tail movements that Amy couldn't quite read. Then Thessa turned back to Amy. "My daughter speaks highly of you," she said. "She says you are kind. That you listen when she talks about our home. That you have never made her feel less than human." "I would never do that," Amy said. "She's amazing." "They all are." Reth stepped forward and stood next to Amy. The gesture was clear. He was choosing a side. "Amy saved us," he said to his father. "When we could not eat, she became our family. She kept us alive. More than that, she helped us feel less alone." Mira joined him, standing on Amy's other side. "The humans have been good to us. Not all of them understood at first, but they learned. They watched how Amy treated us, and they followed her example." Koss was last. He stood behind Amy, tall and solid. "This human honored us when her own leader failed. She gave us dignity. She gave us care. By our laws and customs, she has earned a place in our families." Amy felt her eyes widen. She hadn't expected them to say that. To put it so formally, Thessa's expression changed. The coldness faded, replaced by something softer. She approached Amy slowly, giving her time to back away if she wanted. Amy held her ground. Thessa leaned down and pressed her forehead against Amy's in the same gesture Korvax had used with Koss. "You protected my child," Thessa said quietly. "There is no greater honor you could give a parent. You are family now. Not temporary, not conditional family." Vitor did the same, pressing his forehead to Amy's. His scarred face was gentle up close. "You fed my son when I could not. You cared for him when I was not there. This debt can never be repaid, but it will always be remembered." Korvax was last. He was so tall that he had to bend down significantly to touch foreheads with Amy. "You became pact to my son," he said. "That makes you pact to me. If you ever need anything anywhere, you call us. We will come." Amy felt tears in her eyes. She hadn't expected this. She had just done what felt right. She hadn't thought about honor or family bonds or any of the formal structures. She had just seen three scared kids and helped them. Captain Bennett cleared his throat. "If I may, I would like to extend an invitation. We have a mess hall where meals are served. Perhaps you would join us for lunch. All of us together, humans and Kelzari, breaking bread as friends." The three parents looked at each other again. Amy held her breath. This was a huge moment. If they agreed, it would be a sign that maybe the diplomatic relationship could be saved. If they refused, it would mean the hurt went too deep. Thessa spoke for all of them. "We will eat with you," she said, "but not in repayment of debt. Not out of obligation. We will eat with you because you cared for our children, because you showed honor when honor was lacking, because perhaps we judged all humans too harshly based on the actions of one." At lunch that day, the mess hall was transformed. Tea. The news of the meal spread quickly. Within hours, the Kelzari High Council knew that 3 of their families had formally adopted a human. It caused an uproar. Some counselors were furious at what they saw as a betrayal. Others were curious. A few were quietly pleased. Sareth, the golden-furred leader who had walked out of the first diplomatic meeting, requested a communication with Captain Bennett. This time, she asked that Amy be present for the call. Amy stood in the communication room, trying not to shake. On the screen in front of her was the face of the most powerful Kelzari in their government. Sareth's green eyes studied Amy carefully. "You are the human who fed the cubs," Sareth said. It was not a question. "Yes, Counselor," Amy replied. "Why did you do it?" Amy had answered this question before, but she understood it needed to be answered again. "For the record. For history. Because they needed help and I could give it. That's all." Sareth's ears twitched. "That is not all. You made a commitment. You ate with them every single day for a month. You made yourself responsible for their lives. That goes beyond simple help. That is family." "Yes," Amy said. "It became family. I didn't expect that at first, but that's what it became." Sareth was quiet for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised everyone. "I was wrong about your people." "Not completely wrong. Your ambassador did insult us. He did fail to respect our ways. But I made the mistake of thinking all humans were like him. You have shown me that was foolish. You have shown me that humans can learn, that they can care, that they can become family even to those who are very different from them." Captain Bennett stepped forward. "Counselor, does this mean you are willing to resume diplomatic talks?" "Yes," Sareth said, "but with conditions. I want Amy Carter to be part of the negotiations. She understands our culture. She has proven herself worthy of trust. If she vouches for your proposals, we will listen." Amy felt her eyes go wide. "Oh, Counselor, I'm just a lieutenant. I'm not a trained diplomat." "You became family to 3 of our cubs," Sareth said firmly. "That makes you more qualified than any trained diplomat who does not understand what family means." "Will you do this?" Amy looked at Captain Bennett. He nodded encouragingly. She looked at the 3 young Kelzari, who were standing off to the side. They were smiling. Reth gave her a thumbs up, a human gesture he had learned from the crew. "Yes," Amy said. "I'll do it." The negotiations took 6 months. They were not easy. There were arguments. There were misunderstandings. There were moments when Amy thought everything would fall apart again. But she was there for all of it, helping both sides understand each other. Ambassador Holmes was replaced. The new ambassador was a woman named Victoria Shaw, who actually listened when Amy explained cultural details. Together they worked with the Kelzari Council to create agreements that respected both peoples. During those 6 months, Amy continued to eat every meal with the 3 young Kelzari. It was harder now because her schedule was busier. Sometimes she had to rush from negotiation sessions to make it to the mess hall on time. But she never missed a meal. Not once, the crew understood. They helped her however they could. Jake would remind her when it was getting close to mealtime. Lisa would take over some of her lab duties. The whole ship worked together to make sure Amy could keep her commitment. Her chair in the mess hall became famous. Everyone on the ship knew about it. Visitors who came aboard were told the story. That chair, with its carved flower and worn cushion, represented something important. It represented the moment when one human decided to bridge a gap between species through the simple act of sharing meals. Finally, after 6 months of hard work, the agreements were finished. Trade routes were established. Cultural exchange programs were created. The Kelzari would get access to human technology to help save their dying world. Humans would get access to Kelzari mining operations and their strategic location in space. Everyone won. The day the agreements were signed, there was a celebration. Both species gathered in the largest hall on the Kelzari homeworld. There were speeches and formal ceremonies. Amy stood on stage next to Ambassador Shaw and Counselor Sareth, signing documents as an official witness. But the part Amy would remember most came later. At the end of the ceremony, the 3 young Kelzari approached her. They each carried something. Reth gave her a small stone carved with symbols. "This is a family stone," he explained. "Every member of a Kelzari family has one. It means you are one of us forever. No matter where you go or how much time passes, you will always belong." Mira gave her a piece of cloth, dyed in beautiful colors. "This is from my mother," she said. "It is a family banner. You hang it in your home to show which families you belong to. Now you belong to ours." Kos gave her a recording device. "This has our family songs on it," he said. "When you are far away and you miss us, you can listen and remember that you are not alone." Amy took all 3 gifts and felt tears running down her face. She hugged each of them, not caring that there were hundreds of people watching. These 3 young Kelzari had become so important to her. They were not just diplomatic contacts. They were not just aliens she had helped. They were family. That night there was a meal. Not formal, not official. Just the crew of the Horizon's Edge and their Kelzari friends, eating together in the ship's mess hall one last time before the ship departed. Amy sat in her chair. The 3 young ones sat around her, as they had done so many times before. But now their parents were there too, and Counselor Sareth, and dozens of other Kelzari who had become friends over the past months. The tables were crowded. The room was loud with conversation and laughter. Food passed back and forth between species. Someone had brought Kelzari music, and it played softly in the background. It was warm and chaotic and beautiful. In the middle of the meal, Lieutenant Morrison stood up. He cleared his throat, and the room gradually went quiet. "I want to say something," he announced. 6 months ago, we came to this system and almost destroyed any chance of friendship with the Kelzari people. We made mistakes. We showed ignorance. We could have lost everything." He gestured to Amy. But one person refused to let that happen. Amy Carter took on a responsibility that most of us couldn't imagine. She showed up every day. She never gave up. She built a bridge between our peoples through the simple act of sharing meals. And because of her, we're all here tonight as friends. The room erupted in applause. Amy's face went red. She wanted to hide under the table. So I have a proposal, Morrison continued. Amy's chair in the mess hall has become a symbol. I think it should stay that way. I propose that we bolt that chair to the floor and put a plaque on it, so that anyone who serves on this ship will know the story, so that they'll remember what one person can do when they choose compassion over convenience. Captain Bennett stood up. I second that proposal. All in favor? Every human hand went up. The Kelzari, not understanding the voting system but sensing the meaning, raised their hands too. It's unanimous, Bennett declared. The chair stays. The celebration continued late into the night. When it finally ended, Amy walked back to her quarters alone. She was exhausted but happy. Tomorrow the Horizon's Edge would leave orbit and return to human space. It would be a long time before she saw the Kelzari again, but she had her family stone in her pocket. She had the banner folded carefully in her bag. She had the recording of their songs saved on her personal device, and she had memories that would last a lifetime. 3 years passed. Amy was promoted to commander. She became the head of xenocultural relations for the entire human diplomatic fleet. She visited dozens of worlds and met dozens of species, but the Kelzari always held a special place in her heart. When the Horizon's Edge finally returned to Kelzari space for the annual diplomatic conference, Amy requested to be on board. Captain Bennett, now an admiral, approved immediately. As the ship entered orbit, Amy felt nervous excitement. She had stayed in contact with Reth, Mira, and Koss through messages, but it was not the same as seeing them in person. They were adults now. They had their own lives. Would they remember her the way she remembered them? The ship docked and Amy made her way to the mess hall. It was tradition now. On the first night of any visit to Kelzari space, the crew ate together in the mess hall. And Amy's chair was always left empty until she arrived. She walked into the room and stopped. The mess hall was full, but not just with the ship's crew. Standing near her chair were 3 tall Kelzari. Reth, Mira, and Koss. They were bigger now, fully grown, but their eyes were the same. Their smiles were the same. You came, Amy said, her voice catching. Of course we came, Mira said. You are family. You are always welcome at our table. Reth gestured to Amy's chair. Your seat has been waiting for you. Amy looked at the chair. It was exactly as she remembered it. The carved flower, the worn cushion. But now there was something new, a metal plaque attached to the back. She moved closer to read it. Reserved for Commander Amy Carter and all who build bridges between worlds. May we never forget that understanding begins with simple acts of care, that peace is built one meal at a time, and that family is found in the most unexpected places. Below the words were symbols in both human and Kelzari languages, and at the very bottom, 6 names were carved. Reth, Mira, Koss, and their parents. Thessa, Vidar, and Corvex. The families